Great. Julie, why don't we have you start the recording then?
Okay.
Well, welcome everyone. I am so pleased everybody is here today and have joined us. We have an exciting webinar conversation planned today. My name is Sarah Krymans. I'm an extension educator with the University of Minnesota Extension from our Center for Family Development. My office is out in Morris, and we're going to go ahead and get started today. If you haven't had an opportunity already, please find the chat box, which is down at the bottom of your screen, the little word bubble, and share with us where you're joining from today and how do you identify culturally. So go ahead, and when you communicate in the chat box, make sure you're broadcasting to everyone so everybody can see that. So I am looking forward to that. We do have a poll that Julie is going to pull up for us today. We are curious if people are participating for personal use, for professional use, or for both. So go ahead and select one of those. We'll give folks a few seconds here to respond. Got about half the people responding so far. All right, Julie, let's go ahead. We'll do just a couple more seconds. Let's go ahead and end the poll and then share the results. So it looks like most people are attending for both personal and professional use. A few people for personal, one person for professional use. Thank you everyone for sharing. Julie, we can stop sharing on that. Thank you so much. That's helpful to know where folks are from. I referenced Julie. She is serving today as our webinar producer. So if anybody has any issues with technology, please direct message Julie in the chat box. And she's going to help us do some training and help with the recording and stuff. So I'm so pleased Julie was able to be with us today. So now we're getting to the meat of our purpose for today, looking at reclaiming African culinary heritage. Craig, whose name is at the bottom of the list, coordinated this amazing panel to be with us today. Elder Atum Azzahir is not with us today. I understand she's on vacation and traveling, so we're excited she's able to do that. But we have Miss Roberta Barnes, who is with the Health Hub, and she's the director there. Chef Robert Taylor, a founder and executive director of Zamaya Delicious. And then, of course, Craig Hassel, who is an associate professor and extension specialist here at the University of Minnesota in food science and nutrition. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Craig, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Well, thank you, Sarah, and good morning, everyone. We're very, very happy to have you with us this morning. I am really honored to have this webinar and to have as the presenters Cultural Wellness Center staff and leaders, community leaders in the African American community. And I have been working closely with the Cultural Wellness Center for over 15 years. And I actually study at the Cultural Wellness Center. And I learn a great deal about community engagement. And I also learn about interacting across culture. And there's a couple of disciplines that I have learned a great deal from the Cultural Wellness Center. One is cultural self-study. Another is cultural interfacing, which is sharing knowledge and authority across different cultural contexts. And I've been working with the Cultural Wellness Center, and we're very, very happy to have two people, Chef Robert and Miss Roberta, who've been working very closely on ancient grains and reclaiming culinary heritage. And I'd like to just briefly introduce them again. Miss Roberta Barnes is a nurse. She has her bachelor's in nursing. She's got her master's in business administration. She's a wonderful multitasker and a very warm and inviting person. Miss Roberta has worked very closely with students from our department here in food science and nutrition. And she brings to the Health Hub many skills in capacity building, leadership development, program evaluation, community organizing, navigation skills, and most significantly, her great love for her people and her community. I also want to introduce Chef Robert Taylor. Robert has been feeding me for many, many years every time I visit the Cultural Wellness Center. And his food is a wonderful gift because I sense in what he prepares for me and for other participants. A lot of the culinary heritage that he has inherited from his ancestors. And it's a wonderful gift to taste his food and the care and love through which it's prepared. And that has taught me a great deal. And I always appreciate the work of Robert in bringing people together, because food is so important in bringing people together. And so what I'd like to do right now is to begin with asking Miss Roberta to share a little bit about the Health Hub. The Health Hub is situated in South Minneapolis. It's in the Midtown Global Market, and I want to recognize that the Cultural Wellness Center is a co-owner of the Midtown Global Market, along with Neighborhood Development Center. So, Ms. Roberta, I'd like you to share a little bit of the Health Hub and a little bit of the history of the Health Hub and some of the activities that go on there.
Thank you, Craig. I will start out and identify how I identify. I am African American born. I had the awesome privilege of coming to the Cultural Wellness Center in 2014. And during that time, we had what was called the Backyard Initiative. When I came to the Cultural Wellness Center, I didn't come to actually be where I'm sitting today inside of the organization. I came strictly to take notes for Elder Atum, and it was only supposed to be temporary, very short. And so one of the places that I was to take notes was the Community Commission on Health. And I went to the Community Commission on Health the very first time and heard about these community health action teams. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, did I learn a lot. And I found myself so intrigued with what they do and how they do it. And I felt like I had something that I could offer to that process. So I went to Elder Atum and I said, I know I didn't come here for that, but this is what I want to do. And so she gave me the awesome opportunity of working with these champions in our community, really making a real difference on a grassroots, up close and personal way with community to improve their health. And I knew that they were not shining in the best capacity that I knew that they could shine in. I knew that people didn't realize what they were doing because we come from a world where you're supposed to toot your horn. And that's not our cultural way of doing things. We rather be seen and not heard. We rather have our impact noticed without us having to tell you about it. but coming from a dual world of being African, but being trained in the European system, I knew that I had to find that sweet spot for the chat system so that they could be able to be recognized for the work that they did. Well, that initiative, by the end of the 10 years, because it was a 10-year commitment between the Cultural Wellness Center and Alina Health, by the time the 10 years had ended, the chat teams had served they were in a community of 48,000 residents, and they had served over 36,000 of those residents and had made significant improvements in health, starting with the way people eat. And we went on to become the health hub. It was the after the 10 years, taking the knowledge and the learning that we found in the initiative and building the health hub. And we wanted to continue based on the assessment that we did in the community of what was next, with a high emphasis on culinary wellness, because we wanted to help people see food as medicine, do a three-dimensional approach to health, and have, instead of them responding to the conditions and the diseases that they had, to have it respond to them through the foods that they ate, through the movement that they made, through their African way of thinking, a paradigm shift in the way we think, because there is a way that we as Africans believe, our system of thought, and honoring that and being okay with that, and not feeling like you got to fit into a system that was never designed for you to fit into. And so it brings us to where we are today as we look to move forward. That's where we've been. Where we are right now is a heavy emphasis on food, on nutrition, and culinary heritage. And where we're going is to reclaim and be okay to reclaim what was ours to begin with. And so with that said, I want to talk about culinary heritage and what it means to me. Okay. And I'm going to be multifaceted in this. I am going to give you the traditional definition of what is heritage, I mean, what is culinary, and then what is heritage. Culinary is related to cooking, and heritage means to inherit. You inherit something. And when we think about culinary heritage, we think about food, the practices, the rituals, the storytelling, the connectedness, the togetherness, the family, related and kin, the kitchen, the preparation, cooking, presenting, and the serving of food, mouth-watering, home-style food. There's honor, there's pride, there's a legacy left behind by the ancestors, our forefathers and mothers, traditions, culture, love, memories, sharing, no death, reclaim, recovery, cultural heritage. There's a knowledge in that, and it has been there all along. But because of the stripping of our language, because of the way that we communicated, we did not have the words at the time to put our, as they call the thumbprint or copyright cultural heritage. People talk about there's an emergence, revealing, but it's been there all along. It's been there all along with our people and the way we have looked at food and the way we enjoy food together. The intellectual ownership, the identity, the feeling, the dedication, the caring, and the forgiving through food. We have a lot to forgive, and food is part of that forgiving. I want to share a story about a young girl, Mama Belle, Mama Sally. The young girl's mother was Mama Sally. Three of her aunts, her older sisters. Mama Sally was the young girl's, actually was the young girl's great grandmother. And Mama Belle took Mama Sally in after her family was sold. And she cared for her and loved her as her own. And Mama Sally was not really blood, but she was kin. And so they loved her as if the same blood that pumped through Mama Sally's veins were pumping through her veins. And so they had this regular tradition. It was 3 days before Christmas. And the young girl, all she cared about is wanting to go and check out the gifts under the Christmas tree, shake them to try to see what was in there. But she had reached the age where it was now time for her to join the women in the kitchen. So Mama Belle told her, "Sweetie, it's your time. You're going to join us in the kitchen." And when she went into the kitchen, it was amazing. It was all these things all laid out on the counter: butter, sugar, flour, spices, fruits, all kinds of things. It was just tons and tons of things on there: pecans, apples, peaches, cherries. And so they began to work. And as they were working, they were praying and they were singing and putting together some of the most incredible things: cakes made from scratch, cookies, pies, candies, all kinds of things. And this started really early in the morning, at 4 o'clock in the morning, where the young girl, it was hard for her to get up out of the bed, but nobody went against what Mama Belle said. If Mama Belle said get up and it was time to go in the kitchen, everybody got up and went in the kitchen. And so this lasted way into the early evenings. And so they took all these cakes that spread it across this big long counter in the kitchen. And they began to wrap the different things up. They wrapped up the cakes, they wrapped up the pies, and they made sure that they tied very beautiful bows on this wrapping, that it was presented in such a beautiful, beautiful way. And then we had to dig out the baskets, and we had to stuff the baskets with all these pretty things in there. And in there was apples and oranges and nuts and a lot of the candy that they had made and the cookies they made. And so before nightfall, those gifts were shared to various different people in the community. And it was a delight to see their faces light up as we handed them these baskets. And so as we walked back home, Mama Sally said to everybody, we got to get up and we got to start this the next day, 4 o'clock in the morning. And, the young girl didn't want to get up. She did not want to get up. It's Christmas break, for God's sake. I want to sleep in. I don't want to get up. But once again, if Mama Sally says it, that's what you do. And so the next morning, her sister came, woke her up, and told her it's time. You do not be late to Mama Sally's and Mama Bell's kitchen. You get up and be ready. So she staggers downstairs. And this particular morning was when she went through her rites of passage. In there, Mama Sally told the story about her and Mama Bell, how Mama Bell was the cook in the master's kitchen, and Mama Sally helped her out. She was her helper in the kitchen, and she talked about how they prepared some of the best meals using some of the leanest meat, the vegetables that they had to go out and tend in the garden and pick the finest of those vegetables to prepare for the master, his family, and his guests. She talked about how everything was made from scratch, and and such care went into the making of the meals. Some of the flakiest biscuits ever, her own very secret recipe that even to this day, none of us can make because, as you know, the little girl was me. We could not make Mama Bell and Mama Sally's biscuits. They were buttery, they were flaky. And anyway, so this particular day, they were serving a meal because it was the master's birthday and people had came over to celebrate. And a lot of the people asked her, so what do you do to make your food taste so good? What's your secret ingredient? And Mama Sally told us, she said, Mama Bell told them that her secret ingredient was love. What we were both thinking was a whole lot of prayer on top of that love and a lot of forgiveness. But you don't dare say that to the master. You tell them just what you need to stay safe and not be further brutalized. So she said a lot of love and a lot of caring goes into making the food. She said, but the best part was when we got to leave the master's house and go and spend time in the slave quarters making food. She said, we all got together and the way we made it is it shined through in the taste. She said, it was the waste that they prepared for themselves. All the fine things that you created for the master, his family, and his guests to eat, she said, actually the dogs in the house ate better than them. They could not be caught eating the food that they prepared for their master and his family. So a lot of days, even though she was the cook, her, Mama Bell, and Mama Sally was hungry most days. But the days that they went down to the slave quarters, she said they wasted nothing. They learned how to take the intestines, the small intestines of the hog, the pigs, the ears, the neck, the bones, the neck bones, the maws, and they created these delectable dishes, that which the masters thought was waste. They turned it into a delicacy. And they prepared these dishes. And as they prepared the dishes, they prayed, they sang, they shared stories, they celebrated. And the very thing that people thought was waste, that the white people wouldn't eat, they ended up eating, especially when times got hard. And some of it they even considered a delicacy. But anyway, this young girl thought, I ain't never eaten that stuff. Not me. No, 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 no. And Mama Sally said to me, she said, you know what? People ate the food in order to survive, but you cannot call anything unclean that has been cleansed. And I said, well, how can you clean? I don't care how many times you wash them things or whatever. And she said, See, you're thinking in the natural. You're thinking of the physical cleaning. I'm talking about the spirit cleansing, the spirit detoxification. She said, we prayed over everything. She said, and so who are you to call something unclean that has been cleansed? Something that your ancestors ate to survive, to give you the opportunities that you have today. She said, in all things, you got to give thanks and you got to be grateful for all things. She said, because we could have starved to death. She said, but the witty ideas and the thrust for survival is what made us take what was nothing and turn it into something. And she said, not only was it the food, but it was the space that this food was served in. She said, we lived in shacks. She said, but the atmosphere, she said, the warmth, the welcoming, she said, made it better than the cold, sterile mansions that the master and his family lived in. She said, so part of who you are and what you are, she said, you got to reclaim it, take it back, be honored and proud. Because of them, you stand today. So with that, I will let Robert talk about the food and the space, and then I will come back. We will come back and forth.
So, so good morning. Thank you, Miss Roberta. It really is nice to be here this morning. And as we kind of are entering the holidays with Thanksgiving and Christmas, where the emphasis on food is heightened, this has always kind of been a really special time of the year for me. I think one of the things that I'm realizing at this point in my cooking life and my family life is that food and creating an atmosphere around food and celebrations and family is my calling. So as you know, there's this, I think when I was younger, there was this trying to find what my calling would be. Am I going to be an elementary school teacher? Am I going to be um, an actor and those kinds of things? And I think everything up until this point has really led me to know that my calling is food and celebrations and creating an atmosphere um, that is culturally specific to not only my family and my community, but to all people. I think one of the things that I have really been able to really be good at is uh, in my catering is identifying who the client is or who the guest of honor is and starting to create the space and the menu around uh, that that person or that group. And so it really is kind of a knowing that I think I always had, but to really be able to um, have both confidence and humility in that knowing, I have um, really been able to create events and meals that are that have been received very well. Um, Miss Roberta and Craig are two people who really encourage the gift and the talent around food for me. Um, I have always said I really like cooking for Craig because he's he gives good feedback and really heartfelt feedback around my meals. And it's the same with Miss Roberta. At the Cultural Wellness Center, from the day it opened 20 some years ago, my role was to create the feast around that celebration. It was the first of the year, and I knew that one of the traditions of the of bringing in the new year and in my culture was black eyed peas. Well, I really have always I love black eyed peas and I love the way my grandmother made them, but I have always been, what can I do different? And because I was kind of growing in the Cultural Wellness Center and the Backyard Initiative. What can I do to make it healthier? What can I do to make it attractive to all people? And so we created a black eyed pea salad with green peppers and red peppers, and I think we may have put capers in there, but we did a lot red onion and created kind of a vinaigrette on that and then made it really really appealing visually. I think if you've ever had a pot of black eyed peas, um, sometimes they can get really we really traditionally we've cooked them, and some would say overcooked them. Um, but again, the flavor and what's added, jalapenos, a chunk of smoked meat. Um, I think with the opening of the Cultural Wellness Center, we wanted to do something. I wanted to do something that was new and healthier. Put a healthy spin on it. So we created that salad. I think we put um, fresh herbs in there too, but it was well received. And it spoke um, to people who knew black eyed peas, but it also spoke to people who hadn't had black eyed peas in a while, as a normal part. And it also told that story of black eyed peas. I think it's good luck to have black eyed peas on the first of the year. I think I know that that's the tradition. You eat black eyed peas, you'll have good luck throughout the year, and that's a cultural piece. Um, so that began kind of this me moving really in a direction of being the person who created menus and food. We've always had lots of meetings, always had lots of celebrations, and I think a part of my knowing was to create menus that were, no pun intended, tailor made for each event, each meeting, each group, each celebration. Um, and so I took that very, very seriously. Um, and some would say with an intensity that that is kind of that you kind of find that I'm finding that you find with other chefs too and other cultural. I've had the privilege and of work of talking and speaking and checking in with the sous chef, and he has that same quiet, a little bit quieter intensity around food and around his feeding everyone, feeding the masses, but really specifically his community. And it can be done. Um, and it can be done without anybody really feeling left out. I tell my clients currently that what used to be a trend to have a vegan option. It used to be a trend to do things that were really low in gluten, but it really is not a trend anymore. It's something that we have to do to be inclusive of people's needs. And so instead of doing a vegan option, how do we do the entire meal vegan? Um, and that's where our black eyed peas showed up again, and we did a black eyed pea, kale, and fire roasted tomato soup, and we made that, we built the menu around that. It's vegan. We built it around that. It drew in people based on the fact that black eyed peas that were something that people were familiar with, and then we added the kale and then the tomatoes, and then flavored it with a really uh, natural vegetable soup base. And then created that and then served it with cornbread or served it with a crusty bread or a nice salad. Um, and really introduced it and told people on the other side of the meal as they were eating dessert that that was a vegan meal. That was a vegan. Um, just really timing on when you kind of springing on them that it was vegan. But we had children eating that soup because it's a hearty soup and a flavorful soup and a healthy soup. But we've done many, many, many meals at the Cultural Wellness Center, and then as I started to do that and started to do some healing in my own personal life, I really knew that bringing together all of my experiences, whether it was being a flight attendant or wanting to be an elementary school teacher, that all it's all brought me to where I am today because I am able to teach. I am able to, we do linen with every event. Um, and that is our way of, no matter who the group is, I have really found that the linen really makes people feel, take a second look like, am I, what, this must be a special event. And the answer to that is yes, you are special enough for us to have linen. We've used linen at our parenting groups. We've used linen for our finance committee. We use linen for our weddings, for our celebrations, for all of our events. We do linen and fresh flowers because that tells our guests that you are important, you matter, we care. I think in my effort to really express the way that I care, I really started out kind of like my grandmother. She was a very highly regarded cook in Mississippi at the Piggly Wiggly. And to watch her make her biscuits, that she did this thing with her hand with the dough. And I describe it to my brothers, or I'll describe it to Elder Atum, and they know exactly what I'm talking about. But it was the way she did it. But she, by just kind of watching and looking at her, you may have thought, is she mad? Is she, because there wasn't a whole lot of smiling and that kind of thing. But where the affection and the caring came in is when you took a bite out of that biscuit or took a bite out of that fried chicken. I mean, throughout the entire city, she was known for her food. And when we would travel to Mississippi and get to her house, um, always the same smells, biscuits and chicken. And then again, chicken in the morning, smothered pork chops in the morning, but biscuits and pies and those kinds of things. And that's when I knew she cared. And her intensity, um, and her pride in her cooking, um, didn't always include a big smile or laughter and that kind of thing. But what I've learned to do, and what I've learned to do now, is you gotta have music. The music, I have music on when I'm preparing the food. I have music on certain songs that I have. Again, when our guests start to arrive at any catering event, there's music low, low. I don't know if you can even hear, but right now I have some instrumental music on in the next room, because again, I'm really learning that that sets the pace. We last Saturday we hosted a giveaway, our first annual giveaway. And over the course of 3 years, we've just really, with COVID and those kinds of things, we've really accumulated a lot of beautiful furniture and pieces and clothing and that kind of thing. And so we got it all together and we gave it away for free. And what we did was, in order to kind of raise some funds for our birthing initiative and our recovery initiative, we made food and sold the food. We made our gumbo. We made, our baker did her caramel cake and her coconut cake, and we had the grill going, beef ribs. And so we sold the food, but we gave away all of this really um, very, very nice furniture and household items. And a woman came up and she kept saying, well, is there a limit? And I was like, no, there's a limit. It's free. Take it. And she got all of her things home, mattresses, beds, those kinds of things. She came up to us and she said, you know, this is really nice. This is builds community, because people really need for sometimes it to just be free. And that made a lot of sense to me. So we've done a lot of free meals at the Cultural Wellness Center. But what we do, with that whole concept of free, is that we still do linen. We still do fresh flowers, because sometimes with free, people tend to give you a certain kind of behavior around free, or the expectation is low when you say something is free. But we lift the standard with beauty and a knowing and a welcoming that the Wellness Center has had from day one, is that people come into the Wellness Center or come to a Wellness Center event and they feel welcome. And welcome doesn't always mean that everybody's going to agree on, and that there's not going to be cultural challenges. It just means that there's a level playing ground, and that we're offering food at no cost, but we're asking you to participate, or we're asking you to volunteer. So it's really been a beautiful experience knowing, when you come to the Wellness Center, you're going to hear Hotep. And I used to just kind of say it because everybody else was saying it. But um, with with the word Hotep and the higher and what the symbols are to the word Hotep, it's like an offering, and it does mean peace, but the symbols, the hieroglyphs around it, in the center is a cake, and I think that represents, and Elder Atum did tell me it represents an offering, and that's what we do with our food. And even on um, my paid jobs, we want it to feel like an offering. I again, Craig mentioned self-study. In in my journey of self-study and self-recovery, I have really taken on with my role as chef or cook, um, taken on this kind of, or identifying this knowing that I have about who my client is. Um, on Friday, we've agreed to do something. It's called Sankofa, and it's at the Wilder Foundation. But again, I'm thinking about who the client is. At the global market, when we design menus specifically for diet, that are diabetic, for diabetes, something that, we call it our dialogue and diabetes and dinner, or if it's our heart healthy meals, we're identifying, and designing our menus to support that, but also to support health and the philosophy of the Cultural Wellness Center, to offer and to, um, at sometimes at no charge, and still make it look and make people feel like they paid $45 per plate, that kind of thing. So we do that across the board. And I really am honored and, at a place in my career to where the privilege now of doing this work with the ancient grains is, we're reintroducing the ancient grains because they are ancient, and, we're finding that, culturally they've always been around. We've just decided to go in different directions, and the food trends have taken us down different roads, and we want things now. And with many of the ancient grains, they need to be, it's a timing thing. Just like with my gumbo, this I usually do it in 2 days, but this giveaway last Saturday, I did it in 3 days. I usually do it in 2 days, but I did it in 3 days. The first day is just that broth, that pot liquor, marrying the seafood and the, chicken, broths. And this was a good pot of gumbo, and people really responded to that, and appreciated it. So and again, we I really um I'm really looking at people use all their senses when they experience our food, smell and taste. And we want everything to be beautiful. We we use we I think our brand was white, crisp white linen, but we're now throwing in, splashes of color, splashes of kente, splashes. We really are, adding color to that. And, always, like I said, flowers, seasonal vegetables. Um, we have several partnerships with farmers markets. So we're into, and a part of my whole, um, rejuvenating is to walk through the farmers market and see the oyster mushrooms, and have the person who grew that lobster mushroom, um, talk to me about, taste this. It tastes like lobster. It looks like lobster. And she grew it, and educating me that way, or walking just, to see the watermelon radish, and have children, who grew that watermelon radish, tell tell you about that radish, and also to see just how beautiful it is and where can we add this to our menu, because it's beautiful. Beautiful greens, beautiful fruits. So I don't know if I've gone off the thing, but off the course, but like Miss Roberta said, our heritage is to inherit. And I really have inherited this kind of caring that my grandmother did in her cooking. And that, um, truth be told, I've learned a great deal about many things, but also about cooking and entertaining from Elder Atum. She really, as a child, I would just watch her transform our whole house overnight because our cousins were coming from Detroit. And she'd stay up all night and transform the whole house, and something would be cooking that we were familiar with, but that signified we were having company or someone special is coming. So that caring, we really want to wrap. I really want my food and my the atmosphere to wrap people in with just caring arms, and um, embrace all, our culture, your culture, and we do that. So I'm just really honored to be here this morning. I love the whole. Um, we really have a wonderful opportunity at the global market with this brand new kitchen. I've cooked in some kitchens that weren't so brand new, and so the privilege of working to, I was over yesterday and they needed to know how, because I'm a tall guy, they needed to know how high to hang the pot hanger, the pot. They didn't want me hitting my head on the pots. I've cooked in a lot of kitchens where I've hit my head on some pots, and so this opportunity to take the ancient grains, revisit them. I'm working this week on creating some type of stuffing or dressing using those ancient grains. And um, Everything we do is not an immediate hit or an immediate success. And my mom and my brothers were really, when I was in Rhode Island, um, um, cooking and immersed in ancient grains for a week, I was really excited that I made a breakfast bar or a breakfast treat, and it was terrible. It was with farro, and I needed to just take it easy, learn how it's cooked, learn the best way to cook it, and then day two was a lot better. Day two was a lot better. Um, but the farro, the kamut, the African kamut, it just is really a exciting place to be with the ancient grains, with the new kitchen, the collaborations. Like I said, I mentioned the sous chef. He's over at the global market. So there's a lot of exciting things going on at the global market around food, and we really are glad to have our kind of finger on the pulse of that. Um, and to be coming not completely full circle, but close to all the work that we've done in the community and with the Backyard Initiative and the Health Hub, um, and seeing people who were there in the beginning, and we have people. I'll walk through the global market and they'll say, "Aren't you the person who you do those meals out in the middle, and when are they going to start those meals again?" So we're really gearing up to uh, to be consistent and do the work that we've been doing, and that Elder Atum and Miss Roberta, kind of have led us through, and then creating new things, new recipes, exciting new recipes, where our grab and go is going to be exciting. Our smoothies will be exciting and new, um, and and so we're just excited. I'm excited, um, in terms of the culinary piece, in terms of the visual piece. Even our temporary space over there has a look, and people stop and know because we have flowers and it's welcoming. And so that we're carrying on the work that has already begun with the Cultural Wellness Center.
Wow, thank you so much, Chef Robert. I really appreciate your thoughts and all that you do to develop yourself and develop the food and really bring the best of the culture and your people together through food. I'd like to just ask, well, I want to make a couple of comments. First of all, this last June, Extension Family Development had a conference on healing called Healing Minnesota. And this was a little bit of a turning point for us because we had never really focused on healing as a part of our work. And as I'm listening to both the stories of Miss Roberta and some of the work that Chef Robert has spoken of, healing really comes through as a very important dimension. And oftentimes that's overlooked. And the other point I'd like to make is that of experience and the experience around food and how cultivating knowledge through lived experience is so important. And that often is sort of pushed into the background in our academic approaches to things. We don't value so much people's personal experience with food. But as we've listened today, we're learning how important that personal experience is and how knowledge can be produced through personal experience. And in fact, it's that knowledge of lived experience that really is the foundation for the Cultural Wellness Center. The Cultural Wellness Center is a knowledge production organization. And that's a very important dimension. Elder Atum is not with us, but I know she would want that to be mentioned and made clear that the Cultural Wellness Center is about knowledge and about producing knowledge as central to all of the healing, all of the experience, all of the qualities that have come through in the stories. And I have to say I've benefited greatly from that. As someone who is trained in the Western sciences, those dimensions are often missing. And I find that it makes me feel more whole, and I feel I recover my humanity as I spend time studying myself and working with the Cultural Wellness Center. So with those few comments, I'd like to turn it back over to Ms. Roberta.
We talked about, excuse me, Craig, keep talking. I got a tickle in my throat.
Okay, sure, no problem. Yeah, I want to mention that I've been working with the Cultural Wellness Center since 2005, and it was a colleague in food science and nutrition who had a connection with one of the elders in the community, Elder Bertie. And that's how Linda Brady, a former colleague of mine in food science and nutrition, was connected with the Cultural Wellness Center. And it was Linda Brady who introduced me to Elder Atum, and that was back in 2004. And so this was a long time. And in fact, all the time that I've been at the Cultural Wellness Center, I've been studying, and I continue to study there. So it's really a wonderful resource. It's been instrumental in my own growth and development. Ms. Roberta, are you feeling a little bit better now?
Yes, I had just recently gotten over a cold, and I still have this thing that sometimes is in the back of my throat. We talked about what we believe culinary heritage is and how that work plays out from our personal experience into the experiences that we are creating in community. And Robert talked a lot about culinary heritage. It would behoove me, and he talked about ancient whole grains. It would behoove me not to give full credit where credit is due. We have some very, very dynamic people who are helping us to build out our ancient whole grain project. And it started, and I have to tell you this history, just so you know. we had a group of students from Lynn Marquette's class, led by one of our attendees on Melissa. Melissa is on mine. And they came to the market to be able to help us develop some heart healthy and diabetic friendly meals. And as we were sitting there, you know, Lynn and I and Melissa would debrief after our classes, and we were nearing the end. And now, since all the business part and the academic requirements were taken care of, we started to talk a little personal. I asked them both about what they did outside of this particular class. What are other things that that they were doing inside of the University of Minnesota? And Lynn talked about his work prior. It was in ancient whole grains. And we had one more requirement that we had to complete. And I thought, after that is over, we're all on our free time now, and I can ask you whatever I need to ask you. And so he began to talk about whole grains and the work that he did around whole grains. And he and Melissa and I got so excited because we knew about the African whole grains, but we had this project that we wanted to propose to Elder Atum. So we sat there upstairs, Lynn, Melissa, myself, Craig, Elder Atum, and Allison, who was one of our major funders, and we talked about it. Together, we had, we came up with this plan, and we had the awesome privilege, and still have that same privilege, of working with students now under the leadership of Melissa and Alisa. We've had we had a full year academic year. We've had a summer intern. Then we had another full academic year and a summer intern. And now we're into another academic year. So we've had the privilege of working with students from the University of Minnesota to really help us in the research. They did, and I have some beautiful articles that I have written about them. They did the research on the African grains. And recently, when I did my research, many of those grains that we are going to be reintroducing, because we are, you know, they were always there all along, came over on some of the slave ships with the slaves here to the United States. Some thrived and some did not. Some of those very grains that that we were denied, we're reintroducing them because we have known for a long time that the reintroduction of ancient whole grains back into our diet will get us back that health that we were robbed of and we lost. Just to introduce ancient whole grains into your diet twice a week can reduce your blood pressure, bring down your A1C, cause weight loss, for you to be more energetic. And combining that with many of the health modalities that we already have, because movement is very important as part of our heritage. We did a lot of movement. We came to the United States, and one of the things that we do least of anybody is to exercise or to move. And so we are reclaiming all of our health, mind, body, and spirit, because we have been, the spiritual person has been taken out of us. We've been told that you can't talk about the spirit, you can't talk about the creator, you can't talk about God. You've got to, everything's got to be, but we are not a fragmented person. When you go to see a mental health doctor, the mental health doctor is only interested in your mind, never taking in consideration that this mind is connected to a body and a spirit. When you go to your physician is interested in your body, and he discounts your mind and your spirit. You go to a spiritual leader and he's only interested in your spirit. And so we wonder why so many people are so broken, because the system is designed to treat you as this fragmented or separated person and not as a whole person. Inside of the Cultural Wellness Center, we talk about cultural wellness. Cultural wellness means mind, body, and spirit. We are not a fragmented people. We are working inside of the Health Hub on all aspects of healing. We have spiritual healing. Craig talks about healing. One of the things that I do is I'm learning really how to heal, because so many of us really don't know how to heal. And healing doesn't just begin with one aspects of your life. And Robert talked about self-study. How the healing really begins is to really study thyself and understand why we make the decisions that we make, why we do the things that we do, why do we eat the foods that we eat, why do we say the things that we say, why do we not do the things that we don't do, and why do we do the things that we do. And it all begins in self-study. I can't study anybody else with the eye of changing anyone else other than myself. And if I'm not whole, if I don't operate in truth, in the knowledge that I learn about me, I can't lead anybody else to do it. So the work begins with me, reclaiming the whole me, making no apologies about who I am or what I am, because I used to be this chameleon in a world where I adjusted and molded to my situations and my circumstances. In studying me, I love me, flaws and all. I love me, I understand me, I make better decisions about me, including what I eat, including what I say, including what I do, including how I feel. I do not let the outside atmosphere touch what I know is the intelligence of who I am. To see it, it comes from my heart. It speaks to every part of me. It doesn't fragment me and only speak to my body. It speaks to my mind, my body, and my spirit. And it says, you're okay. You're wonderfully, fearfully, and marvelously made. And you are that that piece in that tapestry that sews the whole dream together. It's not the color of your skin that you need to apologize. It's not the content of your heart that needs to apologize. It is the world that needs you to walk in the person that you were meant to walk in. And when I do that, then everything comes together. I don't have to look at just eating right, because I'm gonna want to eat right, because I love who I am and I want to live many, many years so that my children can inherit what I inherited from Mama Bell, what I inherited from Mama Sally, what I inherited from my mother, what I inherited from my older sisters, my kin, my neighbors, what I inherit inside of the Cultural Wellness Center from Elder Atum and all the people around me, what I inherit from Craig, what I inherit from Melissa, what I inherit from Elisa, what I inherit from Lynn, what I inherit from all of my colleagues. It is creating what I plan to create, because you can only create seed after your own kind. You can't create something that you haven't created. So in order for me to create what I'm attempting to create with all these magnificent people around me, I have to create it here first so I can create it out there. So with that said, like I said, the last part I was behooved not to share, because as much as I love what I do and how I do it, I have some experts around me that only enhance what I'm able to do. You haven't eaten food until you've eaten Robert's food. He is a awesome chef. And he talks about his gumbo. I was out doing a vaccine event and did not get over there to get some of his gumbo. And I had been thinking about that gumbo all week when he told me he was gonna make it. And guess what? I called him the next day, or I texted him the next day and asked if there was any left so that I could send my husband over there and buy us some. It was all gone. Craig, I have the awesome privilege of sharing my vision. And my vision, and don't get me wrong, when I say my vision, it is a vision that Elder Atum has handed to me to bring to pass. So my vision is the vision inside of the vision for the Cultural Wellness Center. So I don't want it to get twisted to think that this is my vision, because it's not. I get the awesome privilege of saying, Craig, I need to be connected. I need to be connected with the people that can help me do this. And that's how I was able to get connected to the awesome and the very dynamic Lynn, Marquardt, and Melissa and Alisa, and all the countless students that have come into community. And they don't come in community as a teacher. They come in community as a student and teacher. They glean from the community and the community gleans from them. They have this attitude about how things should be done. And it's because they too are studying. They studied from the very beginning themselves. They learned how and why they make the decisions that they make, enhancing themselves to enhance others. So with that said, we've got about 10 minutes left, and we didn't leave enough time for questions and answers. So I will turn it back over to Craig so that people can, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask away.
And thank you, Miss Roberta.
Mhm.
What we'd like to do is to have you unmute yourself if you have a question or you'd like to share something with Chef Robert and Miss Roberta. Most of our participants are associated with SNAP-Ed, and Elder Atum has talked about wanting to connect in the future with SNAP-Ed and with WIC. And so that's part of what we're hoping to begin with this webinar.
Mhm. And I want to, can I do one more thing, Craig?
Sure.
And especially now since you said SNAP-Ed and WIC, because it's so important. We have come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. And one of the things that I always do is I always tap into community and community assessments. And I'm going to take you back, but I'm going to bring you forward to today. Hunger was the young Frederick Douglass' faithful boyhood companion. I have often been so pinched with hunger that I have fought with the dog, Old Nep, for the smallest crumbs that fell from the kitchen table, and have been glad when I won a single crumb in the combat. Many times I have followed the eager step, the waiting girl, when she went out to shake the tablecloth to get the crumbs and small bones flung out for the cats. This was Frederick Douglass back in the 1800s. This is today. Hunger is real and present today. I go to bed hungry a lot of days. I live in one of the richest countries in the world, not a third world country, a country where people's pets eat better than me. That is a real testimony from a person who lives right in the designated backyard. Hunger is real. And SNAP and WIC can go miles and miles and miles to help address this issue. But also in addressing this issue, there has to be education. You can't put something into an empty container without a bottom, because before you know it, it's going to be empty. It's going to go in and it's going to run through. One of the things that we do inside of the Cultural Wellness Center is knowledge production. And one of the things is part of that knowledge production is actually education. You need to educate people about how to manage their money. We do a cultural financial literacy curriculum. You also need to educate people on how to eat nutritiously. And without those things, guess what? It has no bottom. It's going to go in and run out. So with that said, I'm glad you told me where they were from, because this is a real issue in our community. And that is why Elder Atum wants to connect with SNAP and why she wants to connect with WIC, because we want to see our people move from victim to victor, the people that receive a hand up so that they can come out, not stay in the same position that they've been in all of their lives. And so thank you, Craig, for giving me my minute of, of my commentary. But okay, now we'll get back to letting people ask questions if they have any.
Please, we have time for question or comment. Anyone would like to share?
Hi, I'm a nutrition educator and teaching coordinator with the nutrition program here in Wisconsin called FoodWise. And I loved this morning. It was so good. And you have such a blessed place with your center. And I wish we had a place like that in our community here in Kenosha. We're in a place that needs a lot of healing. I'm get emotional.
Yeah.
How do we begin? Like, you have a beautiful center, right? We have agencies that we partner with. Like, how do we begin to try to have a place like that here? With, you have a beautiful place, and it's just like, how, I don't know. I mean, we go into our agencies, but it's such a collaborative space you have. And
And you hit on it, collaborative. One of the things that when the initiative first came into existence, even though I didn't have the privilege of being here when that happened, is they started in community. They went to people and asked people, what do you think is needed to heal? And once you know what's needed, then the collaborations can happen. And they're going to get you the outcomes that you're really seeking. But what happens so often, like it did with our partner, we think we know what community needs. We do all these things without even knowing. If I don't know you, how can I help you? I can only assume. And you know what they say about assume, and that's what community said about us. But one of the things that you can do, social media is powerful. Put you a survey up on social media and get feedback from community. Find out what they need. And then, like I said, once you know, then you can be able, because probably like Minnesota, Wisconsin has got so many nonprofits and so many organizations that you begin, if we get another organization, Lord help us, but then you can begin to look at who those organizations are and what their missions are and begin to collaborate.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Roberta.
thank you.
I'll also add that I want to emphasize again, the Cultural Wellness Center is grounded in a knowledge system. And oftentimes that knowledge system is an invisible dimension of culture, but yet it's the strength and the grounding for cultural community. And so it's really important to recognize that. I want to thank Ms. Roberta and Chef Robert for being with us. I'm going to turn it back over to Sarah. She's got a few closing details that she'd like to share with the group. But thank you again, Ms. Roberta and Chef Robert.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, for having us.
Oh, thank you so much. This conversation has been so amazing. And thank you, Miss Roberta and Chef Robert and Craig. This deviates from our typical webinar, and it has just been so good. I'm so pleased all of you are here today to participate. If anybody needs a certificate of participation to document this professional development activity, we can provide that for you. In order to get your certificate, we do need you to complete the short evaluation, and Julie will put this link in the chat, and I will also send a follow-up email to all of the participants so you have that as well. Really quick evaluation. What did you like? What might we ask Craig and his team to think about presenting in the future to continue this dialogue? And then we are going to be sending a follow-up evaluation down the road after we get done with all of our webinars in this series to see what you've thought about the content and the conversation after you've let it marinate a little bit. So please complete that evaluation. As indicated, we do have a variety of webinars. Some of my colleagues in our Latino financial literacy team are doing some webinars. We have some that we've titled in this Together Supporting the Needs of Families and Communities. We have some that look at financial capability. The What's for Dinner fit in here with the Reclaiming African Culinary Heritage. And we also put that down in our Minnesota Communities and You series. And then we also have some on identity theft and scams. And we're in the process of planning our next round of webinars. So any input you can provide is so appreciated. We also invite you to engage with our University of Minnesota Extension Center for Family Development. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter. We've got some videos up on YouTube. We're also there on LinkedIn. I did put in the chat just a little bit ago the web address for the Cultural Wellness Center. So go there and check that out. Lots of great. Also on the bottom of this slide, we encourage you to subscribe to our Family News e-newsletter so you can learn more about what's happening with us. So thank you again. Craig, any final words for folks?
No, thank you. It's been an interesting experience and we appreciate your having us. And we'll look forward to seeing people in the future.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Julie, we can stop the recording now. Perfect.